So thank you everyone for coming. We just wanted to do a kind of close conversation with the leaders of Between Spaces to tell you a bit more about the event and the lead up to the events that we've created and all the different elements to the show and how it's became what it is today. So we've got our co-directors, Tia and Georgia. We've got our curation leader, Emma, and we've got our publication team, Katie and Kamile, and then Danny and myself are the outreach leaders for Between Spaces. So I will hand you over to Danny, who will tell you a little bit more about the show. And before I do, I just want to let you know that we have other shows on this week. We have events. So Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday we have artist talks and Q&As from 6 exhibiting artists, and on Friday we have a panel discussion where we won't strictly speak about Between Spaces, but we'll go a bit more in depth about some current themes in photography, anything that gets raised today, and some other things like that. So without further ado, here's Danny, my partner in outreach.
Thought you were going to say partner in crime then. No, but obviously, of course, it's, as we all know, it's been challenging times, both kind of within all of us trying to finish not only the degree show, but also our final year of our degree. So honestly, a tremendous amount of effort's gone in from everyone involved, both in terms of the directors and the people submitting as part of the degree show. Making sure we can reach those deadlines and all kind of working together as a team to produce this kind of collaborative effort in terms of curation, in terms of submission, in terms of the design for publication, and making sure we can all spread the word about all of our kind of individual practices as well. Obviously, of course, we've had to shift a lot of things in terms of our adaptability from the physical onto digital, and kind of exploring as we go along and all of us learning new skills and everything like that. So of course, not only from helping to develop our own kind of practices, but also learning as individuals how to work as a team through digital when we're all kind of individually separated, so we can't have those meetings anymore. So a big learning curve for us all, but I think I can speak for all of us when we're so proud of what we've achieved, and the amount of effort that's gone in is wonderful. So obviously tonight we've got people from all across the different spectrums of the degree show. So we've got not only the leaders, we've got Tia and George, of course, we've got aspects from the design team to speak to. So that's both in terms of merchandise, in terms of social media output, in terms of the publication as well. So we get to kind of see both the physical and the digital representations there. And of course, we've got Emma on the curation side as well, putting a tremendous amount of effort onto creating that virtual space for us all to kind of show our work, which is absolutely wonderful. So yeah, we'll go and pass over to Georgia and Tia, the leaders of our degree show, and see what their kind of input is.
Who wants to go first, Georgia? Do you or me?
You can go, don't worry.
I'll go, shall I? Okay, so yeah, many of you may have seen what we've done so far, but our degree show consisted of different platforms. So we have our web gallery, which is our website, and it has all of the information about our exhibiting artists, alongside our publication, which is a really, really exciting endeavour, which Katie and Kamile have done really, really well on, and it's really, really good. And we have a virtual show, obviously, which Emma is curated. And the shift into this sort of online degree show has certainly been a challenge. None of us has ever really worked in this way, and we never really expected to work in this way. The change sort of happened within a matter of couple of days. It was like Monday we were told that uni's getting shut down. We were like, oh my god, like what's gonna happen with our degree show and like graduation and everything else? And then like, by Friday we're like, yep, everything's cancelled. And we were like in this hole, I guess. We're like, oh my god, like what do we do? How do we convert our show into like this online show where like people can still see it? So it was a bit of a tough pill to swallow, I'd say. And we were in a bit of denial, saying, oh no, it'll happen eventually. And as the weeks went on, like it just wouldn't, we couldn't do it. But the move from physical meetings to remote meetings had some aspects which were easier and some aspects which were still kind of hard. So despite the easiness of being able to wake up at like 9:50, 10 minutes to grab a coffee and chuck a hoodie on and be ready for your remote meeting was the nicest side of it. But it's also being quite time consuming. I guess because like not having to literally leave the house and go out to these meetings, it maybe not as time consuming, but having to spend maybe like sort of an hour and a half, 2 hours in these meetings that maybe wouldn't have taken so long, has been certainly a challenge. And even though it is all remote, it still is very tiring. Just having to like get up and prepare yourself for this meeting. But I think this has definitely been a benefit, having to work in this way, because you learn a lot more skills which maybe you couldn't do in person. But yeah, things like with publication, especially having to do it all online, has been quite hard. I'm sure Kamile will tell you about this a little bit later, but obviously we'd have like be able to print proofs and stuff for our publication, but we haven't been able to do that. We just had to sort of solely work online, which has been quite hard. But I really hope that the digital publication does translate well into the physical one, and I'm sure it will, because both Kamile and Katie have done like amazing jobs with the design of it. And yeah, I think the good thing about working remotely is that we are able to meet a lot more. Like some of us maybe can come to some lectures in uni, but like it's been a lot easier to sort of work quickly. I think with other people, you can type someone a quick message, 5 minutes, they'll reply, and you get that sort of thing done. Whereas with the meetings, you'd have to wait like maybe a few days to actually speak to that person and try and sort it out. But yeah, I mean, I've just talked a lot of you now, so I guess Georgia may want to say something now.
Yeah. So yeah, kind of like everything that Tia said, really. I think the main thing that's kind of come from this is kind of realizing that how we took everything like for granted, I suppose, in just like the everyday life of like bumping into each other and seeing each other. And I think especially with photography as a course, I think everybody else will back me in saying that our course, especially at Carve, is such like a communal course. And I've always said, like throughout the last few years, that one thing that I love about our space to work in and stuff is that, you know, you come in, it's all year groups of photography, and it's so nice. You get to see like everyone's work, what everyone's doing all the time, and it makes you realise that, you know, on a day-to-day basis, if you've got like a question to ask someone on another team or whatever, you know, you'd bump into them on the way in the corridor, or it's so much easier to kind of like grab people along the way. So I think in terms of like talking about having to change things to like these Zoom calls and meetings online and stuff, I think that's kind of been the hardest thing, in realising that you don't just get those little, I think those things, the process of jumping from like sometimes the things that would have probably been small things to sort out then became like dawned on us that like things weren't going to be the same as normal, and when we still had to like fight through like, you know, hand-ins and how is this going to change our hand-ins, never alone about the degree show. You know, everyone was just so piled on top with like these new ways of working, and I think the biggest challenge for us was getting through that initial process where we literally felt like we'd stopped like in time, and like we just couldn't see ourselves like going any further with what we were doing. And it did take a few weeks of like just like working and hard on it to see like an outcome. And I think as soon as we started to get the ball rolling and the merch came together and we got like the design team started smashing out the designs and everything started to tie in, then we knew that like, you know, this had actually worked out quite well for us and we were in the right place with everything. So yeah, I think we're very lucky to have a patient team in terms of what it could have been like, because even though it's been stressful, it definitely could have been worse. So yeah, I'm very, very, very grateful for that. In terms of thinking about the skills and stuff that we've learned or maybe took from this in terms of like what we would have expected before, I think using initiative is probably like one of the biggest things that we've had to like work on, and realizing that, you know, it's a tough time for everyone in the world and having to be there for each other, really, which I think is what's really pulled through the end of like what we've got, our publication, our website, our virtual degree show, all of it, like all just pulls together those little aspects. that we were really wanting to like get out to people, because the most important thing to us at the end of the day was that coronavirus isn't going to stop people from seeing our work and seeing what we want to do, and I think that's the most important thing that we've achieved. So yeah,
I just think I'll add to that. Obviously prior to COVID, our exhibition was, I'd say, like 80% of our show, whereas now I'd say it's sort of split between our virtual exhibition, our publication, our social media presence, our website. It's all, I'd say, like a 25 split, which has been quite nice, because I feel like people who maybe might have felt like they didn't have as much to do prior to creating a degree show, they maybe had a bit more to do, and it was quite nice to see everyone like sort of working together and that. I think like it's definitely led me to be more confident with my leadership skills and my decisions, I guess, because sometimes as a director there are some compromises you have to make, and you also want to try and make people happy, but there's some cases where like you just got to do what's best for the team, and that can be tough, but I think me and Georgia and the rest of the team have sort of managed to stick by it quite well.
Yeah, it's that adaptability that everyone's kind of put in across the board of, obviously, as you kind of mentioned before, the start of 1 week we were all systems go for a physical exhibition, and the short kind of period of time that we all kind of had to adapt to that, and the kind of level that everyone's been able to do that has just been absolutely wonderful. I think that's one of the most standout parts of the show, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry. So you said in the official launch on Thursday that you'd both like to take on a role like this again. I'm just wondering whether directing this show in these like circumstances has changed the way you do this.
I think before the show there wouldn't be as much of like a digital element to it. I mean, obviously there would be, but wouldn't be as large. Whereas like now that I had to move online, I think we're getting more and more people viewing our work, and more people are viewing that work for a longer period of time as well. And like obviously it's really important that people not only see your work but remember it. So I think having that like sort of constant reminder on like social media, you know, probably might be a little bit annoying that we're like constantly like updating you with stuff. It's all sort of led to people sort of knowing us and knowing our work and remembering it, which I think is the really, really important thing. So I think going on to further roles like this, I definitely would include a larger digital element of it, where you can sort of reach out to a much wider audience.
Yeah, and then moving on from what Tia said earlier about, you know, before the main kind of part of our degree show was literally the show and seeing the work in that space. And I think if I was to go into something like this again, it would make me think more about seeing all these components as equals, and just realising that each bit of the degree show is just as important, like the smaller bits, and like the research into like, you know, just all the social media stuff, like when's best to post, and proper thinking about the audience like you're wanting to draw in, because that's so important, especially obviously when people are graduating, and you know there's industry people that we want to be like grabbing their attention and stuff. So I feel like this year it's really highlighted like those thoughts that before would have still been there, but just like not as strong in thinking about them, I suppose.
Yeah, it's definitely made me realise that like having an online presence is such a big thing. Like you need to constantly promote things, else you're just like not going to get seen as much. I think we've all sort of realised that over the last few weeks, that like social media presence is like one of the key things to get an audience engaged and involved, and hosting events like this and actually getting people like involved with them and like sort of talking to us lets them remember us a little bit more, remember our degree show, because we want like people to think, oh my god, yeah, Coventry University, we had like that really amazing degree show, it was all virtual and it was really, really cool. They produced like a really nice publication and everything. Like we want people to remember that, and I really think that they will.
Thank you both for that. It was really nice and informative. So yeah, I agree with all the points you've made, and I think the development across the show has been it's been pretty jumpy. Like at the start we were so unaware of what was going to happen, but I think it has came together really nicely. And one of the later additions to how we were going to do the show was the virtual show, So that leads me on to introducing Emma McGarry, who is our lead curator, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about the development of the show and what she's created. And if you haven't seen the show, it's just in the chat box. I've put the link there, so you can see everything. But we do encourage you to take some time to see it, because I'm biased, but it's amazing. So here is Emma.
Hi guys. That's one of the first things I wanted to say, was that the role of curator, in a sense, became something really different from its original intentions. Normally we would have been served a space and we would have had to work within it, but instead we sort of had to design a whole concept for the physical space itself. And as well as curators, we also became designers, and we manufactured this entire online space, which was really great, and we wouldn't have had that opportunity if we had just done a physical show. And that isn't to say that the exhibition itself is particularly complex, but a lot of care and thought has gone into the way that this exhibition is going to be experienced online. And we really took advantage of the fact that in this digital space we can really do whatever we want with it. So we gave ourselves plenty of space to work with. We inserted walls wherever we wanted, diagonal walls, any size. And I think in that way we created a sort of guide through all of our works. I think something that was really difficult was that everybody's work is so different. Everyone has really different methodologies, themes, and different ways of presenting their work as well. But it was actually really exciting to do that in a digital space. And Denisa, who's not here right now, she also helped me with the curation. She's in Bulgaria, so we were working from quite a distance. But our first initial ideas for the curation, I guess, in any curator's role, was to sort of make visual and thematic connections to maintain this flow between these really completely different works, whilst using these different spaces and viewing lines and wall structures, just to keep everything really exciting and refreshing as you went around the space. And it was tricky to make those connections and make these flows go remotely, because normally we would have everybody's prints or videos or materials in a physical space and we would be able to experiment with them. But instead we were working remotely with time differences and working on a Google Drive, which is obviously a little bit harder. We didn't have that freedom even just to print things out on an A4 printer and stick them on the wall just to play around with it. So that was definitely tricky. But we didn't want to put all of the black and white works, for example, in one corner and keep all of the participatory works together. We really wanted to keep things refreshing as you move around the space, and I think that we did that pretty well with the virtual show.
I'd definitely say so. And what would you say, like, the importance, especially at the moment, of having that virtual space is, like, comparatively to alongside the website space and the publication, for example?
I think the web gallery acts as a portfolio essentially, and I think it's really good for getting a really quick insight to our bios and our works, and also these other elements of the show. It's great all in one. But I think what the virtual show gave us was that real experience of a degree show that we were missing when we thought we weren't having one. We had a launch where we could all just freely and intimately explore this space, and really whenever we want and wherever we want to as well. We can use this on mobile or laptop wherever we are, and I think that allows people to connect with us in similar ways that the physical show would have offered, but it also gave us a chance to celebrate as well. So I think having that launch night and having that time to have a Zoom call whilst people were allowed to move around the space gave us that real sort of finished product feeling. And I think having these events running this week as well, it just sort of opens more doors for conversation, whereas I think the web gallery in that way is limited, but it's great that we have both of those elements alongside the publication as well.
So do you think you could say that this way of exhibiting work is better in one sense because it increases your audience over like that prolonged period of time? And does it have the negatives as well, in your opinion?
I think it's really difficult to say which is better. I think in one way the virtual show is infinite, and like I said, like we potentially have a global audience now. Like I know on our launch night we had people who were viewing, our international students, for example, had family viewing. I had friends in Australia who would come to the degree show, which obviously they wouldn't have been able to do with the physical space, which is really great. And in other ways we weren't limited by tools or materials. Like I said, we didn't have this fixed space, and I know that this year we were we were going into the hub, which is, for those who don't know, is our university building, and all of the degree shows were going to be in one place. And I think we didn't have to fight for that space by having it virtual, which is really good. And also, you know, like I was saying, although we had this limitation with the Google Drive, and that was our only way of experimenting with the works, it was much easier to add and delete and move works around than putting nails into the wall and getting ladders and framing and all of those sort of things as well. So in that sense, I guess it works really well. But in another way, the materiality of everything is really missing, and some people's entire projects or their presentation plans were really sort of put to a halt. They really had to reimagine the way they were going to make that look in a digital space, because it isn't going to work for everyone. And I think for photo books or for analog prints, which serve as very like tactile objects, it's really difficult to communicate their meaning in a digital space, because the way they feel, the paper type, the size, how you connect with the physical object itself is a really big part of it. And I think for those of us who did have those elements, it was a little bit trickier to communicate that. But I think generally the online space has served us really well. We've had like nearly 600 views now, and it's only been up for a couple of weeks, which I think is way more than we would have had in the physical show, which is really good. And like Tia said as well, these other elements now have been elevated, like this publication, our merch, the social media, these events, like they're so much more important now than they maybe would have been before. And I think that just adds such a longevity, and I think this will be a really ongoing thing. And I hope that next year they'll have a virtual show team who will work on that solely next year.
Yeah, like I know the amount of kind of pressures in terms of not only trying to, you know, kind of communicate everyone's bodies of work as different as they are, as you've said, trying to thread those together in one kind of cohesive way, but also, like, I know there were some issues kind of battling with the actual technology of it as well. And I think everyone's got to kind of praise you on how much you and Danissa did such an amazing job of like being able to pull all that off, especially in kind of like the limited kind of space we had in terms of being able to all kind of meet up and, you know, kind of communicate. It's been amazing what you guys have been able to do for us. So we can all kind of applaud you on that. It's been amazing. So obviously, as well as the kind of virtual space, we've also had the kind of outputs of the publication as well. So we're going to bring kind of Kamile and Katie into the conversation, as they've been involved with both the design and the publication side of it. So would you guys like to introduce what kind of work you've been
doing? Yeah, sure, go ahead. So this year we wanted to create something different, something that would exhibit our abilities as professional artists, and the publication has currently like moved away from the traditional means of, you know, a catalogue, and it's become something exciting and a part of our degree show that's showcasing 24 artists from the cohort. As a collective, I'm sorry about this. As a collective, we wanted to create something beyond the catalogue, something with the addition of a foldable cover that allowed us to create new, exciting, interactive experience for the viewer. So whilst we had all these challenges arise of COVID going on, it's not hindered our process. It's made us stronger as a team. With the use of like digital platforms, we've been able to utilize and create digital versions of the publication, so accessible to all sorts of people from around the world, even as Emma mentioned, people that can't access it in the physical form. So yeah, we just welcome you all to celebrate with us and take a look at our journey of between spaces and how the publication's been made. And
yeah, so following on from what Kamile said, I think it's been quite interesting for us, because normally at uni we've got like a big magnetic board and we can post lots of different ideas, play around with layouts and things like that, and we haven't had that benefit. Obviously we're all in our own spaces, and I think that's also where the title of Between Spaces come in really nicely. We didn't sort of predict this, but Between Spaces, we have all quite literally been between so many spaces at this point. It's played quite well. But yeah, so without this space to work in, I wouldn't say it's disadvantaged us. I would say it's just made us develop like visualization skills a lot better. So I know that I'm now more comfortable if someone turns around to me and goes, is this going to work? I can go, well, yes or no, based on my newly developed visualization skills. And in a way, we were in quite a good position before the lockdown happened. we'd got all our paper samples, we were on board with that, and so we all had been able to like try these different papers and try the physicality of them. And then as things developed, I know that I've been engaging with local artists a lot more, and so I was seeing these ideas come up from other people, and I was like, well, the poster zine structure, that I don't know how many people are aware of poster zine, but I ordered a couple and I went, actually this could work for our publication if we then produce this poster that people could put on their wall, and it's not just a case of, okay, there's the publication, it goes on the bookshelf. It's like, I've now got something to remind me of each person's work on the wall. But yeah, it's been really interesting to work with print companies during this time and just see how they're planning things, and without this ability to print something and actually go, okay, this is how it's going to look. It's been trying and tested skills, I guess, but it's been really fun, and it's been really interesting to see how things have developed along the time.
So how do you think your guys' kind of more physical side to like the degree show's output kind of works like in combination with the virtual, especially like at this time, as you've said?
It's been like quite difficult, obviously, not being able to have test prints and samples, working with the whole, such a object that is meant to be so tangible, however, we've worked really well with the whole online platform and creating the digital thing, and it's just, I feel like as a whole that's been shown with the online publication, like all the effort that's gone into that. And yeah,
I think it's been really interesting to see the virtual exhibition alongside the publication, because the publication is put together slightly differently to the exhibition in terms of sequencing, and it's interesting for people to see both and compare how the work not only works on its own but works alongside other works, because it makes you consider them slightly differently. And so you're having two ways of viewing the work, instead of, if we were doing a physical degree show, it would be, as Emma said, everything would be up on the wall and you'd have a catalogue and it would be a case of going through alphabetically. But we've been given this freedom now to work with this interesting and playful publication in a different sense and curate it not just based on the alphabet but based on how the work can intertwine with each other.
Thank you both. So I know you're both really into design and obviously good at it from what we've seen from the publication and works, and I'm just wondering whether this has kind of influenced the way that you're going to work in the future, and would you take on a role like this again in a space like this if it was digital, and do you prefer working this way in any way? Either or.
Yeah, I'd definitely do a role like this again. I feel like with what's happened, that being all this online stuff, I feel like I've learned so much more about all these programs, more about it really, like with the Adobe stuff. Like I'd used it before obviously, but now it's like you have, that's your station, like you've got to work with that. Like there's the physical versions of things, that's it, you have to work with what you have. And I feel like throughout this time you've like learnt these skills and just adapted to it, and I feel like I could confidently do that next time and create something similar.
I think it's difficult to say whether I'd do a similar role again. I think I've enjoyed it. I've learned quite a lot about my design abilities and what I need to work on. I know I want to go into design, but I think I don't want to knuckle myself down into just doing book design, although I absolutely love it. I think realistically my place is within a design agency where I can create branding and things that then lead into things like the publication, because my primary role was as one of the three branding people, and I think that's the bit I really enjoyed. And as much as I've loved print management and playing around with people's work in that sense, I think realistically that's my process, doing the branding to lead into a publication instead of solely on a publication platform.
Thank you both for that. So now we're supposed to have Livy, who has took on a big role between merchandise and marketing with us, but she unfortunately couldn't make it. So I just wanted to say some words on behalf of her. She wanted to say that it was an honour to collaborate with Etch and Pin, because they've helped us create a really stable image and a piece of merch that we're all quite proud of, and situates itself quite nicely within Coventry culture, which was something that we wanted to be a part of, considering that we've all spent so much time learning there and obviously like developing as artists there. Coventry itself has had quite a big influence on our work, and with it being the city of culture, that's always been something that we've like strived towards together. Libby also said that the target audience was broadened in a sense by making the move to virtual in terms of social media and marketing the event, and she said it was an exciting challenge to take on. And I think, as all the other leaders have said throughout the evening, that the move to digital has broadened the degree show in every sense. We've came up with different ways of exhibiting our work that we perhaps wouldn't have if we had the physical show, and that's also meant our audience has grown. As Em said, we've had so many views that we probably wouldn't have got in a physical space. So that's been really exciting. So within our merchandise, we've got 2 tote bags and the badge, and soon we'll have the publication. So we've had Alice from our class. She designed the badge and a lot of other different types of design for the tote bags. And then we've worked together as a team to kind of create which ones were published, because obviously there's a lot of ideas throughout. But we wanted to make something that, obviously with the lack of physicality in the show, we wanted to really put an emphasis into having something that we could take away from it. Obviously like a souvenir, and also something that would remain in Coventry, or be rooted within Coventry, which is the badges. So we just want to say thank you again to Etch and Pin for collaborating with us on that. It's been brilliant. And everyone has spoken, so if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. But yeah, thank you all for coming, and we have some more exciting events through the week. So on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, we're going to be hosting the Artist Talks and Q&As on Instagram Live. So you can find them on See Your Photo Show and See Your Photo. And then on Friday, we're going to have another panel discussion, which will be a bit more broad. So if anyone has any questions, just let us know. But thank you for coming.
I can read out the questions that we received from Instagram.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yep, cool. So Aaron, who is here with us now, asked us our favourite and least favourite parts of the university experience. Does anyone want to go first and jump on that one? Go on, Dan.
I'd love to say, like, I think it was briefly touched on a little bit earlier. One of my favourite kind of aspects, especially of our course in particular, was the fact the way our kind of course is structured and the way our actual building's structured. It's helped to create this kind of almost like an academic and creative community, in the sense that there's so many opportunities for us to kind of bounce ideas off each other, whether that's kind of in correlation with the actual stuff we're doing in class, or whether it's stuff we're doing independently as practitioners. And it's allowed some people to kind of actually go off and work together as groups to make their own kind of portfolios away from uni, but together in kind of pairs and trios kind of thing. So it's always nice to kind of sit and get other people's feedback. That's one of my favourite things, because I know without that I'd personally be a lot more introverted than I already am. So for me, that's brought me out of my shell, both as a person and as a practitioner as well.
I'm going to jump in there. So I'd say kind of similar to what Danielle said, really. I think as well, another thing that I realised throughout COVID was how much I actually appreciated the time that the lecturers gave us, especially towards like the last bit of handing, where it's kind of like having a sketchbook, and like I used to always remember like, oh, you know, when we used to say like, make sure you got your RDB and it's got all your like progress and development in, and being like, I hate carrying it around and stuff. But to have like a physical book of your work and your ideas, and like obviously when you're a creative person, like that's literally everything, like your whole like mind like process is in there. So to not have them in front of you, to like physically go through, you know, those images on a contact sheet in front of you, and having to make like digital copies of basically like the work that you've done was quite hard. So it did make me realise how important it was, especially like close to deadline, having that time to just like whack out a sketchbook in front of a lecturer and just be like, did this, blah blah blah, and then actually see that journey, which was really important. And yeah, the same with like kind of like the whole like communal thing. I feel like maybe a bit more because we've gone through what we have done this last year, but don't know, I kind of feel like leaving Cov and leaving the course, like it's definitely kind of like a family that you're leaving behind without sounding as cringy. But yeah, 100%. And I think there's a lot of people, like I know that I kind of like come in, do my work, get on with my business, and I go home. But this year, I think 100%, like I feel so much closer to everyone than I thought I ever would have. So,
does anyone else want to answer that? All right, I'll move on to the next question. So you got a question that says, where have you promoted a degree show? I can answer that one because I've done a little bit of the social media side with Livy. Promotion has mostly been on social media accounts, so Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We've also contacted a lot of outside organisations, like art-related or photography-related organisations, in which they've sort of listed our exhibition on their website, which has been quite nice to get that extra engagement from them. But we've also tried to make sure that we've included a lot of the guest lecturers. I think Anne-Marie is here with us tonight, who has done a lot of guest lecturing, editing sort of workshops with us. So it's nice to get those people back involved and engaging with us as we have with them. So we've also sort of promoted out to them as well. But yeah, got another question as well. So how much does a proper degree show cost? Georgia, do you want to answer this?
Yeah, so there's as much hard work as there is fundraising. So we had a fundraising team at the start, and it's things like bake sales, pub quizzes, just small events that obviously raise money, but they also get people starting to engage within what the show is, and they know about it from early on. So if they go to that pub quiz, they're going to see that progress. But the publication has been our biggest cost. Which Katie has been like liaising with the company about. So publication printing is, I didn't think it was this expensive, but obviously it's worth it to see it in the end. But you know, it depends a lot on size and like paper quality. I'm sure Katie could elaborate much more on what I'm saying in a better way. But essentially it is obviously, it depends on how you want to do your show, but the way we've done our show has obviously cost a couple of £1,000, which luckily obviously we didn't have to fundraise all of. But yeah, I think it depends how much you want to get out of the show. I know I'm kind of brushing over that question, but I'm saying a lot, but it depends a lot on how much you want to get out of it, because you need to put that hard work into fundraising so you get to that point, because there's been a lot of things that we've had to have the money to buy, like merchandise. That's obviously a big cost, which we know we're going to get back in the end. So yeah, it's as much as you put in as you'll get out, but a lot. So you have to work hard, and obviously it pays off. And Emma would like to answer.
Yeah, I was just going to say, of course, there's the cost of a lot of like renting space. But also a massive thing that would contribute towards degree show costs is the individual artist's work, the cost of prints and bookmaking. It's a lot. I think that we probably be getting into sort of, maybe if we really thought about everybody's individual works and put them together, I would be thinking maybe we would be pushing like 10 grand for a degree show, maybe even more, depending on how stingy we were feeling with our prints and everything. But I think that's a big thing to think about as well. And I think in another way, we didn't have to worry about that, which was great, because I think during the pandemic, a lot of us were compromised financially. A lot of us, you know, weren't in work, or we were on furlough and maybe not having as much money as we would have if everything was normal. So I think that was a really good advantage of having the digital show as well, that took a lot of pressure off.
Yeah, I think, sorry, go on, Katie.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think going digital has really shifted our priorities. So originally we were going to have a catalogue and a publication, so there was going to be one physical object that was going to be free and one that was going to be sold, and then there was going to be all this merch, and it was about finding ways to generate the money to do the rest of the things that we wanted to do. And so by going digital, our focus was like, okay, so we now don't need to have the space, we don't need to have the second catalogue. We've got this extra money that we can put towards
maybe making our publication better, because as Georgia said, they don't come cheap, especially when we have expensive taste in paper. But it's one of those things that it will stay with us for a long time, and it's something that we really want to show people and bring our work to life that we weren't able to do in the physical space. And so yes, degree shows are expensive, but your money sort of aligns with your priorities and how much you want to showcase your work.
Yeah, I think just going on what Katie said, like, I think in terms of if anyone is obviously going to be doing a degree show, it might happen in a really different way than what we're doing it now. But I think knowing how you're going to do the degree show obviously affects the cost, but it's knowing how everyone wants to do it, because there's some people who might not have thought about a publication so much because they thought about a physical space, but when that idea came into play, it became such an important part of the show. And like the virtual exhibition didn't cost us anything, but has also been like really huge for us to showcase our work and bring that different element to between spaces. So yeah, it obviously is expensive, as everyone has agreed on, but yeah, fundraising is really important, and just managing finances together. You can't have one person making the decisions. You've got to bring in everyone's ideas and see how everyone wants to spend that money, because it's everyone's work at the end of the day. So yeah, and we've got Danielle who's just going to build upon that.
Yeah, it was just adding on in terms of not only is it like obviously the financial aspects, especially at the minute of the degree show, it's also like how much it's costing everyone involved in terms of their own time, in terms of not only the body of works that they're producing for the show, but as you kind of mentioned, the whole journey of going through the fundraising to kind of build that engagement and get the conversation going about the work that's going into the show. And then the constant deadlines of like looking at Katie and Kamile with the like publication side, and then with Emma with the curation side, and every other aspect that's involved. It's that kind of element of how much it's costing everyone in time as well. And it's very much the case of, as we've like touched on before, the amount of work you put in is definitely equating to the amount of like opportunities and everything that's coming out of it as well, which I think, especially in terms of like the kind of easy to distribute kind of virtual space, and then obviously the tangible aspect of being able to showcase the publication in everyone's portfolio going forward and their professional practice, it's invaluable.
Thank you.
I've got one more question, and it says, where do you find sponsors for the degree show? So I think if we had transformed into a physical exhibition, we probably would have found some like local businesses to possibly sponsor us, because this was something that we did talk about. But obviously, with being that online, we didn't have to spend as much money, which meant we didn't really need to find sponsors. But we did have some vouchers from Basement Rounds, which is like a local coffee business, pizza business. So I guess that's kind of like a little sponsor, because they gave it to us for our fundraising events, so that we don't have to spend our own money on those events, like the prize and that, which was quite nice. But yeah, not any sponsors per se.
Also, I think, yeah, as Tia said, not really sponsors, but we had a lot of support from local businesses in Coventry, which was amazing. So we were due to hold a publication launch in The Botanist in Coventry City Centre, who offered us the space essentially for free, and that's kind of like a two-way thing. Like, we were obviously going to promote their space within Coventry and take some photos for them, and they were going to offer us a space where we could launch the publication. So I think in terms of sponsors, if like the people looking to do next year's degree show, I'd advise not looking at it that way. I'd see it as a two-way thing. If you can offer someone something and they can also offer you something, then you both benefit from it. I'd say that's a better way, and you're going to build connections that way. That'll last longer than the degree show.
Etch and Pin as well, although we've worked with them a lot, I think our role with them was quite different. They helped us, and the way we got introduced to Aaron at Etch and Pin was actually he came in to do a marketing lecture with a few of us, and some ideas were bouncing around, and we went, well, you've done some badges, why don't we create our own badge? Would you help us out with this? And Aaron was absolutely amazing, gave up so much time for us to bounce ideas off of to then organise all of this for us. And he's been absolutely amazing. And it's getting involved with companies like that that really helps develop a project, because you can learn from their expertise and they will be there to help you. And you're also promoting them in a different sense, because maybe Aaron wouldn't have targeted the creative and like photography market that there is in Coventry, but we've been able to bring him into that by creating the badge and collaborating for it.
Okay, so if that's all the questions we've got, we'd just like to say thank you for coming. It's been really nice to talk a bit more in depth about the show and all the different elements that you've heard about that have made the show. So yeah, thank you for coming, and thank you to all the leaders and directors for sharing some of their experiences with us.
And thank you to Georgia and Danny for hosting this event as well.
No worries.
More than welcome.